Well, so today's kind of sermon thing, much like when in Rome, is going to be on timing. And I'm still kind of debating putting it on the other video or on the other channel or not, just because it's going to be very similar to like it here. And I don't see the point of asking all the subscribers to jump over when really the only warning that some of these things might have to come with is just an explicit warning for language. So I'm going to play that by ear. But for now, I wanted to talk about timing because it's been on my mind a lot. Timing, everybody talking about the fact that time seems to be moving really weird, especially through 2020, and it's an interesting concept, and one I've always been fond of anyway. So I started digging into it, and I started praying about it and asking God, it's like, okay, so we get all these faces, all these verses, all these different things, all these preachers, like the Lord's timing is perfect. And maybe it's just me, but I've sat there going, okay, Lord, but your timing sucketh, and it's very difficult to hold the two together because you want to trust God to do it His way, and you want to trust that the timing will come out the way it is meant to. At the same time, mix the fact that we're an instant gratification society and the fact that, honestly, in the middle of so many unknowns, it's nice to have something that we can say, okay, at this time and place. And I think that kind of digs into it, because when I started thinking about it more and more, I came across three words that just kept popping up to me: time, timing, and surrender. And when you first dig into the idea of time in the Bible, the first place they see any telltales of it is in Genesis, where day and night, and as the sun and moon, or the big lamp and the little lamp, are set to keep an eye on time. They're the ones that are to watch it. And more and more we try to control time. We try to measure it exactly. It's something that we can grab onto. It started with the sundial, and now it's down to measuring the decay rate of atoms, which, although yes, is a form of conveying the concept of linear momentum through the fourth dimension, or time. It's not actually counting time because it's an intangible concept. We see the decay rate in atoms in something like carbon or uranium, and we can use that observation, the seen, to convey the unseen, that we are able to observe based on effect. It's a similar idea as to weathering copper and having it go from the rather lush color it is to oxidization. It's something that we try to control, try to put a meaning to. Lord, help me with this, please. And it's kind of interesting that when we try to measure the unseen, and this just may be me, I think about things like a watch pot never boils, and I think about all the different expressions we have for conveying time, not just as an intangible subject, but is how we kind of interact with each other. And as I started thinking about that concept of time, that what it looks like, it's eth in the Bible, eighth, in Hebrew, and it's basically a win. And it kind of makes me think, it's like, okay, so what if the concept of timing isn't the same as, and obviously, the whole our thoughts and his thoughts are not our thoughts thing, but I wanted to dig into it more. Our idea of timing versus his. Because his version of timing, is reading through the word, is an exact win. That things happen in the right sequence of events that kind of pushes it onward. That God is moving in the unseen through things that are visible. Not just in time, but in how He acts, because timing is His real thing. Because we're inside the fourth dimension. We're inside linear time. So something that exists outside of it, a being that exists outside of linear time, is going to have a perspective we don't, you know. And God, knowing everything, is going to have the ability to see ahead. You know, I always like the idea of time and free choice as a choose your own adventure novel. The ones that were big in the 90s. I used to read them all the time, especially the Goosebumps ones. And, you know, I'll admit there were times when I was just like, okay, I'm going to put my thumb on that page and then go a little ahead and nope. And yeah, we wish we could do that too. Have a time machine. It's like, oh, I wish I hadn't said that. Shh, you know. Because there are moments when we have that. Every single one of us. How many of us pray daily? It's like, Lord, put a gate over my mouth. Because I really don't want to say something I shouldn't, you know. And even just that, I'll pray that just so God will keep me from dropping certain profanities that are unnecessary. So that they're less gratuitous and more excited utterance, admittedly. You know, and it's kind of fun that we can hold to him and to his way of doing it. You know, with the adventure thing, he sees it. He sees what's going on. He knows it because we make our choices. But the entire book already exists. It's written out before him. Just like with the Choose Your Own Adventure novel, the entirety of the character, the entirety of the book exists. It is the reading through and the choices made that change the story. And, you know, that God uses those events to still work timing, to still work things to his time, to his glory. That it may be a Charlie Foxtrot moment for us, but in the right time, it works out. You know, it's interesting, pardon the nudging of the camera, I'm being assaulted by Cat. It's interesting that, you know, we even have a concept for this in life. Tragedy plus time is comedy. And, you know, with God having a great sense of humor, and anyone who others argues otherwise, giraffe, duck-billed platypus, get back to me after that. You know? So rhino's an interesting one, too. Enough Cat. And, you know, God having the sense of humor that he does, there's a certain beauty to know that he works it out in a way that brings glory, that we can focus on the good things, that in shit there is fertilizer. And that's a beautiful thing to me, because it means not only is the concept of timing remarkably different from our own, it becomes a way of healing. That time ends up being a when that allows for growth. We even have it in Ecclesiastes, a time and a season. You know? A time to be born, a time to die, a time to live, a time to... You know, a time too. That everything has a set season. And so God working the seasons rather than worrying about the seconds, because he has those. We don't have to worry about them. He already has them, every single one of them numbered. So he can worry about the event rather than the decay rate of atoms as our kind of way of conveying time. Because I think it's an issue of wanting something to control, which, to say mastery of time, who hasn't in our history as a world thought about that? The concept of time machine. I mean, even ancient Greek titans, Chronos, and things like that. That there are these understanding of time, understanding and wanting to go back to change it, to alter it, to master it. And in a way are trying to deduct the movement of it. It's like, oh, well, this is the decay rate of this. It's because we want to have that control. So if that kind of control is something that is less akin to actual control and more akin to worry, because even if you can measure them all out, can you do anything with them while counting them? Or are you using the moment in which they exist to count the moment that they exist? Which is kind of funny on a physics level, but it's interesting to me that the way, and the reason I say on a physics level is because it's not quite Schrodinger's, but no, it's the observation of the object changes the state in which the object exists merely by the act of observation. And it's like, is this choice of how we want to do it a chicken and the egg watching of, you know, counting down the moment, but the moment was just lost because we counted it down, focusing on the kind of stuff we can't control, or focusing on the time that brings things all into proper season. And I think what that looks like is, the third word, surrender. Because it does take a fair amount, a modicum at minimum, of the self to say, okay, I can't control it, so I'm going to give it to the one who can, and focus on the moment rather than the seconds. I'm going to focus on the people, the event, the story, rather than the distraction. Rather than trying to master time, rather than trying to say, no, this is the exact time of everything, it's surrendering to it. It's surrendering to the fact that God has it. That it isn't just to say whatever will be, and ignore it. Because you can't ignore it. If you ignore these things, they build up. No matter how you cut it, they build up. They dig in. They cut through. And you have to own it. You have to let it. I heard a great earlier yesterday that emotions are a bit like ice cubes. You set them on the counter, put them out in the open, they evaporate in next to no time. You stick them in a freezer, you bury them down inside your core, and they're kept like that forever. Until either that last bit's my own, yeah, but until the fridge dies or the ice cube is taken out, it's just going to be that giant hunk of ice in the middle of us. Taking it out, putting it on the counter, airing what's there in love, remembering that nobody's perfect, and growing together. Now that's a way to do it. That's a way to spend moments. It's accepting the fact that with what we can't control, we focus on what we can and rejoice in the moments where life comes from graves. Because, again, back to the idea, comedy is tragedy plus time. The Lord says through Paul to focus on good things, pure things, reputable. Things to praise, not things to curse. And to me, that's focusing on laughter. To me, that is focusing on the fact that life, though remarkably craptacular in some regards, and that varies based on person to person, really, there's a bit of irony in all of what's going on, and there's humor to it. And I've been kind. This may be a little detraction for the sermon. I apologize for that, but just be honest for a minute. I consider this all the era of irony, and I may have said that in the Romans one, but it's the truth. I say, bless you, Cat. I say the era of irony started when, in international headlines, possibly national, U.S. president wins Nobel Peace Prize, gives speech about importance of staying at war. From there, the irony ensued. It just gets funnier. People being hoisted by their own petards when they wouldn't be at all if they had been doing what they said they were doing rather than doing what they were actually doing. Bless you again. That's funny to me. Not that people are suffering through the ramifications. The fact that we're seeing firsthand the answers to so many questions that were debated through the 90s. Ideas of goodness and morality. Questions is like, if you're doing the right thing in the first place, I think you really need to bring religion into it. Especially since religion as a ethereal concept tends to cause more problems than it solves. Faith, not so much. But again, that's, it's interesting to me that, there's so many things that with time, growth comes out of it. That we can grow together and hear each other. Or one of my personal favorite things, social media gives everybody a voice. What we do with that voice shapes. So we can either use our voices to build or destroy. And it's interesting to me that when you take away news feeds, when you take away that crap that's trying to control time, and you focus on the moments, there's more good than bad. There's more information out there about people helping their fellow man, about people shouldering suffering together, arm in arm, holding each other together, than there are people acting in savagery. And those are the moments to focus on. Getting back to the idea of surrender and time and timing, it's saying it may be what it is now, but it won't always be. For my own part, my fiancée is stuck in Canada. The borders are closed right now. They won't always be. And I'm not going to give up hope. Because, well, one, why would you honestly when you have it? And two, being without hope is what saps the very life from our joints, from our bodies. We have to have something that inspires us. The idea of a light at the end of the tunnel is so prevalent for us worldwide in many ways because we're longing for that glimpse. We're longing for freedom from the stuff going on. People get tired and dragged down by the rat race. I would argue that if we all stop playing it, it doesn't exist anymore. If we decide that playing a game of, who's going to run themselves into the grave first is remarkably stupid, and I reckon, it's how we survive, but there are more of us than them. Can't a lot of us just say together, look, I'm more interested in life than I am being a cog, a gear, or a body count? No. Just no. Because the two versions of time speak volumes. One version of time is every second of your life must be counted out. Every single one of them we're going to make sure you use ultimately and optimally. And if you don't do it exactly as we did, exactly as we have told you, you fail. Oh, you need a sick day? Tough. That seems okay to anybody. It's certainly not okay to me. But time, living in God's time for the moments. We have so many idioms in our culture, especially in the United States. And I mean Western culture, but especially in the United States, that are trying to convey this deep thing. How many movies, how many stories that convey, it's like, well, life is what happened in the in-between. Yes. Doesn't that mean the focus should be on the in-between? The events of being together, of going for a walk, of saying, okay, this moment in my life may not be the best. Hell, it may be a chocolate dumpster fire, but it's not the end. It may be a craptacular moment brimming with suck, but it's not the end. And it is not the end until there is no more breath left in us. And even there's a choice. To take our ball and go home, or to believe. To say, okay, this can get better. And even if you're just like, okay, well, I don't see God making it better. What if he gave us the energy to make it better? What if the waiting for calling thunder and fire is a thunder and fire burning in us to go do? The two are not mutually exclusive. And I've found through my own experiences that generally God speaks in one more than the other. He speaks in fire, cloud, thunder, in audible whisper, when we need that kind of clarity. When it's a beating in our chest, this is wrong, let's go fix it. That's him too. That's that same kind of drive. It's focusing on his way of doing it, his time. Because in his time, what is in us to do, and we do, it can change the world. Whether it be I'm going to go start up this company to change the world, or whether it be I'm going to give that person a lift. Because I know what it's like to need to carry groceries home that kind of distance. And I have time to do so. Right back to that idea. It's like, well, the timing says I might be a little late to work. But the right thing to do says offer. And God will handle the time. Because if a watch pot doesn't boil, and we serve an all-powerful God, I'm pretty sure he could just and stopwatch. No, go ahead, give him a lift. There you go, and back to work. He's all-powerful, he can. And if the system says, well, doing the right thing is not acceptable. No, the system is not acceptable. And it's simply told no. Because it's kind of the option that's laid before us. It's the option that rings through the Bible. Very one of two options. And that's not to say pick a fight with everybody in any way, shape, or form. Because sometimes I wonder if I was not the dictionary definition of stubborn in my life. Because, seriously, it took God breaking my back and my neck and his audible voice for me to kind of start getting a clue. So, and it's that not wanting to fight thing. It's wanting to lay down weapons against each other and fight against what we're really supposed to fight against. Broken system, principalities, corrupt things that shatter this world rather than build it up. And it's just a beautiful thing that we can focus on that. We can do it his way. I've been saying in these videos all the way through Romans what that looks like. And I reiterate it here. Kindness, goodness, generosity, fairness. Treating others the way you want to be treated. Doing what is right for the least of these. Because one day we might be the least of these who need it too. And when we rise by lifting each other. We rise by helping, by pulling each other up. And if we fall, that will be together too. So, with the idea of timing, instead of focusing on decay rates and second to second and making sure that every life meets every alarm, we focus on the moment. The two are not mutually exclusive, focusing on both. But one has to take priority. People have to take priority. And the lot of us together have to say that. The lot of us together have to be willing to say, no, you're right, people first. As for my own part, if the options are being 5 minutes late to get to a place where there is more paperwork to do, or giving the person a lift, I'm pretty sure God would rather have us give the person who needs the hand a hand. And if it's not on our heart to do so, then do what is on our heart to do so. Focusing on giving our time, our moments, Shema, our head, our hand, our muchness, to Him. Because it's a sacrifice of praise when we take a moment just to spend with Him. It's a sacrifice of praise when we say, okay, this isn't happening when I want it to, but it will happen when it is meant to. It is a sacrifice of praise. To say, I don't know, but I trust you have me, Lord. It's not a small thing to do. And it is surrender. All three are surrender. All three are a form of giving up our own control over the situation, or our need to control it, or our need for answers. Sometimes we pray, and it's like, I ask God, and I ask God, and I ask God, and he just won't give me the answer. Okay, ask Him for a different question. Because what if the question He gives you is the point of the answer you're getting? I mean, who knows, maybe God is particularly fond of Jeopardy. It's the same idea. What is Istanbul? Correct, So, if we can trust God, if we can trust God enough to say, okay, I don't know, but you do, so I'm going to trust. That's a step. That's a great step of faith. That is a great act of surrender. And whether we know it or not, it's an act of praise. It's an act of worship. It is an act of holding out to the Lord. I wrote this and it just kind of came to me, so please forgive the slight stutter. It's own handwriting joys. We try to master time, rule it, withstand it. In the end, we hold only but a moment, the ones in which we dwell. To be present, exist in the moment will be as much sacrifice as leaving pain in the past or leaving doubt about the future. To give up control, to give up control, not to what will be, but to where God is moving expected and unexpectedly. Open hands, open minds to the idea that God will never let us go. I've read it a couple of times. I just still can't read my own handwriting. Sorry. It's getting to where expected or unexpected, hands full or hands empty, we trust that God will do what He says He will do, that He will have it in His hands. Worry has never helped anybody. No one has ever grown so much as an inch looking in a mirror, worrying. But focusing on the person we are, focusing on what we are called to do, what we can do, that makes us shine tall, to use the same metaphor. You don't have to worry about the when. That's already established and known. We may not know it, but such is part of surrender. Knowing that God is in control and that He does know it. So we can hold to this idea that the Lord has it in all things and in all ways. It's merely a need to trust Him. To trust that He will do exactly what He says He will do. Take care of us. I think in a lot of ways it's that taking care of us doesn't look like what we want it to look like. Because in a lot of ways we want comfort, not growth. And growing's painful. I don't know if anybody else remembers growing up, but, growing pains and stretch marks and all that fun stuff of going from itty bitty to weed, a little bit painful. Growth can be painful. Growth also sometimes requires surrendering. A tomato plant, when grown, is placed around something to help it grow with. If it tries to grow on its own, it's weak, unstable, the fruit barely useful. But if it surrenders to the idea of growing with it, I know, a bit of a mixed metaphor, but the idea there. When we hold to that thing that's like, here, trust, relationship, this will guide. And the fruit bears much. And the plant, potentially very healthy, as long as the soil is. It's kind of fun to me that there are so many animal husbandry and farmer metaphors, especially farmer metaphors in the Bible, and farming metaphors, that it kind of connects deeply into the idea of season. We rotate out the crops. We ourselves have things rotated from us. New soil, new nutrients, and sometimes new shit to make the fertilizer richer. It's not always easy, but growth never is. It's not always difficult either. And sometimes, in the mountain or in the valley, when we focus on the moment with God, timing becomes an act of surrender because we give it to Him. It's been a few thoughts on timing and digging into it. We'll probably do Fridays continued, but definitely over on this channel, just because I think there are times when you just need to be honest. More honest than a churchy vibe where you can just say, Lord, your timing sucketh. Show me it. Because if we're dealing with the fact that the Lord's time sucks for us, that's a control issue. It's one thing that and I know you close with this kind of example perhaps, but when driving down the road, if somebody cuts in front of me, rather than get frustrated about it, because I used to, I rode a motorcycle, I'm like, hi, I am driving, I may break your mirror with something. Didn't, but thought it, I wondered, though, I started transitioning, especially with Alpha Family, to this idea that, what if it's not them cutting you off?